Welcome inside another edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP. We have a very significant threat of severe weather on Wednesday. Now we have a small one upcoming tomorrow, but a more significant one coming up on the day on Wednesday. So we will get in here and break down all of that information only on the forecast with Stingray and TP. Welcome inside another edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP. I am your host, Stephen Ray, and we have a big, significant threat of severe weather this upcoming Wednesday. But before we get into that, let me go ahead and pull up my co-host, Taylor Plott. Taylor, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. And going ahead and tell everybody, since we haven't done this in a while, a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So currently I work up in Huntsville at a company called Barron Weather. So we provide software, weather, graphics, stuff like that, also radars. But I'm also on the weather team down at CBS 42. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And so, yeah, been basically in the weather community for close to 8 years now, I believe. Good grief.
Yes.
Feeling old now.
That's insane. All right, man. Well, let's go ahead and kind of tell people a little bit about what's going on this week.
So we basically got two risks of strong to severe storms. The more robust, potentially significant risk will be coming up on Wednesday. But we're watching for tomorrow is the cold front and the system that's been associated with the severe weather and the blizzard happening out there in the high plains parts of Colorado and Wyoming, where they actually saw about 30 plus inches of snow. Can you believe that? And only about a 36 to 48 hour period. And that's just insane. So when that cold front moves through later on tomorrow, it will spark off some showers and storms. But the thing is, it's going to limit the severe weather risk is what we call the dynamic support aloft. That's colder air that allows for greater lift in the mid and upper levels. That's going to be well off to our north and to our west. And so it basically leaves the line of showers and storms just out in the dust. Basically, it just leaves it to kind of weaken on its own and just die out. But there's still some decent wind shear with it. There's going to be some decent instability across parts of the area with it. So while I can't completely rule out that we'll see an isolated damaging wind or maybe an isolated tornado too with it, the bigger threat that we're more concerned about will be coming up on Wednesday.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead in here and show you real quick. Make sure that I've got this correct. Now, that is for Wednesday. And as you can see, there is a good portion of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama underneath a 30% chance of seeing severe weather. Now, that, of course, is why we are concerned. That would be places like Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, basically all of Mississippi now, and then portions of Louisiana as well.
Yeah, and I get questions about this a lot with the percentages and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, well, 30%, that's nothing." They talking about like a 30% chance of rain, and they're more likely not going to see rain. I get that. I get where people are coming from with that. But the thing that's different with the Storm Prediction Center is that you're not just talking about a chance of rain forecast. You're talking about individual storms that could potentially become severe. And so now you're talking about a very, very small, localized area that could see severe weather. So that's why the percentages are the way that they are. So when we talk about 15, 30%, in this case being the enhanced risk, that basically means that, okay, you're probably looking at more scattered to numerous severe thunderstorms in the place. That doesn't mean that like your place is going to see severe weather. It definitely could, but that's why the percentages are low, because you're only talking about a storm, a single storm that could impact the area. But getting into those percentages deeper, that's a conversation for another day, because you can really get deep into that. But basically, all this means is that you're probably going to be looking at scattered to numerous showers and storms. Whenever you start getting the enhanced risk, that orange area, that's when you start seeing the potential for more significant type of severe weather with tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds.
And as you can see right there, because of that, the National Weather Service in Jackson has issued an enhanced risk that is a 3 out of 5 confidence for the potential of severe storms likely, damaging wind gusts. Now, here's something interesting. Large hail up to the size of golf balls or maybe even larger, and tornadoes are definitely possible, and the risk with the enhanced and possibly even and a moderate risk, we cannot rule out the possibility of a few strong tornadoes there within Mississippi and far west Alabama. Now, of course, that is their central Mississippi area. Now, as you move over here into Alabama, if you are from the cities of Gadsden, Anniston, Alexander City, and points off to the west, that does include Tuscaloosa, Demopolis, Selma, Clanton, Birmingham, Hamilton, you guys are in the enhanced area for tornadoes damaging winds upwards of 70, and $half sized hail are very possible with this system on Wednesday. And then, of course, going down here into the Mobile area, National Weather Service, if you were down here from Mobile to Greenville, Alabama, and points off to the north and to the west, you guys are in the enhanced risk for tornadoes damaging winds in excess of 60 miles per hour and quarter size hail or larger. So once again, this is a
I think we might have lost Stephen there just for a little bit. So basically, what we're going to be dealing with now is you see your location on the map, and whether it is your enhanced or slight. At this point, the way that the overall system is looking like, regardless of what your risk level is, everybody across parts of Mississippi and Alabama has your risk of seeing damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes on your Wednesday. Basically, now it's just if we end up getting a higher risk issued by the Storm Prediction Center, that just means that it's going to be more on a widespread scale. So regardless of what your risk is with this system, your threats are going to be the same. You're going to be dealing with the potential for damaging winds, some larger hail, and some tornadoes. And there could be some stronger, long-tracked tornadoes in the mix as well. This is the type of system that when we see during the springtime, that could give us those more EF2 or higher tornadoes that are on the ground for 20, 30 miles at a time. Now, I know a lot of people, ever since that April 27th historical event that happened, there's been a lot more severe weather anxiety across the area. I get that. I got members of my family that feel the same way. My sister's one of those, and it's just I understand the anxiety level on this and how it's like, okay, well, great, here we're going again with more severe weather and stuff. We'll get through this just fine. All you need to do is just know that there's a risk on Wednesday, so now you have time to prepare. Make sure you have a NOAA weather radio handy and it's powered up. It has batteries in it as well, just in case the power goes out. Flashlights, if you have any medications that you might have to have, stuff like that. Just your usual just preparedness, just in case you do actually have to need it on Wednesday, whether your power's out or you might have some damage to deal with and stuff like that. We'll get through this just fine. Again, I understand the anxiety, and I can go ahead and just tell you by looking not only at the type of data that we're looking at, but just April 27th. I can almost guarantee you that. April 27th was one of those where you usually get them in more generational segments. So the one that people would remember if they were alive back in the 60s and the 70s would be the 74 outbreak. And that's the one that the 2011 one beat historical wise in number of tornadoes and stuff like that. So you usually get those very big, just incredible events usually every generation or so. So we had one 2011. So if you kind of do the math and kind of look at historical aspects, it's still going to be probably years down the road before we see another one like that. Not to say that we can't anytime soon, but it was definitely one of those where it takes a lot to have that happen. Almost everything went perfectly right on the severe weather side of things, atmosphere wise, to get that type of event. And it's really, really hard to do that with the atmosphere. That's why it happens on more rare occasions. But that doesn't mean that this is not going to be a potentially significant event. I do think that there will probably be some longer track tornadoes and strong tornadoes on Wednesday across parts of the area. Whether that ends up going down your street or somebody else's street, we don't know yet because the storms hadn't developed. We just don't have that technology yet. Hopefully one day, maybe one day we will, and we'll be able to say, you know what, these storms are going to be within this little zone during this time. And I mean, that's going to be incredible if we can get that technology. But basically, bottom line is that, yes, Wednesday could be a significant day. It could be one of the more higher impact events, and just be prepared. I always like to say, be prepared, not scared, because what happens is if you get scared, you end up making not really good decisions, I should say. So just be prepared. As long as you're prepared, you prepare for the worst, you're going to be golden. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So that's basically, now we're just in that preparedness time frame to where just yeah, we're getting to that springtime again. So just make sure you have batteries ready, your supplies ready if you need it. NOAA weather radio handy. Make sure your weather apps on your phone, sometimes those don't really get updated, and you have to kind of go in and actually manually update it. Make sure that those are updated so you can actually get the latest warning information from it if that actually has an impact on not being updated. I'm not a big app know-it-all person, but I do know that sometimes that is the case. You have to update those for it to work. I'm seeing some comments on the side here. People trying to see what's going on in the Birmingham area. I think Steven, are you with us right now? Actually, I need to check my phone. I think he might have. He just says keep talking. So let me just kind of go through here and see if I can.
We are expecting some significant severe weather this upcoming Wednesday. On this edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP, we will break it all down for you and get you ready for the potential for a nasty severe weather outbreak only here in the Southeast, only on the Stingray and the forecast with Stingray and TP. Welcome inside another edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP. I am your host, Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, and we apologize for the other broadcast. We had some technical issues, but nonetheless, we have a significant severe weather outbreak possible this upcoming Wednesday. So without further ado, let me go on ahead and bring up my co-host Taylor Plott, and we will get in here and break down all of that information for you guys right now. Taylor, how are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. And like I said, I want to apologize for the technical difficulties that we had earlier. But as you know, technology, right?
Yeah, I mean, it happens on my end. It happens on everybody's end. So it's just one of the fun things about technology is that sometimes it just doesn't want to work.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, what are your thoughts on the upcoming severe weather outbreak that is potential to happen on Wednesday? Now, there is a small threat that is supposed to happen tomorrow, but that one's looking a little bit less and less. But the main show will be Wednesday.
Yeah, so we'll have a line of showers and storms that moves in tomorrow afternoon across mainly parts of northern Alabama. I think that's probably, if you're going to get some potential severe weather, it's going to be across parts of northern Alabama from Florence over to Huntsville down to maybe down to Coleman and then points off to the west. That's where, if you have the better all overlapping ingredients, which is still very marginal at best, it's going to be in that zone. Now, the big issue we're watching for is coming up Wednesday, and that could potentially have a more of the higher impact events. It's going to be probably the more robust potential for severe weather that we've seen so far this spring, really across the entire South. Talk about the plains or even here down the Southeast. So that one really does bear watching for, as that could potentially have some more significant damaging winds, some large hail, and even some tornadoes involved with it.
All right, man. So let's go on ahead and break down and go through the models real quick. But before we do that, I would like to also show you that we have a pretty significant threat. And because of that, let me pull up here. We have a 30% hatched area. And let's go on ahead real quick, Taylor, and tell them what the 30% represents.
Yeah, and real quick, I see comments on the side. Jamie K, oh, we do love your commentary. Just keep it coming. Keep it coming. Yes. We love it. So the enhanced 30% risk, that is advertised by the Storm Prediction Center. So basically what that means is that you have more scattered to widespread severe weather potential. I know a lot of people look at this and be like, oh, 15%, 30%, that's really not that high. And you're right, but what they're talking about is very small scale things. You're talking about individual storms across the area. So whenever you start seeing 30%, 45, 50, and then higher and higher like that, you're really starting to get into more widespread severe weather potential. All this is basically a percentage on what is the coverage of the significant severe storm potential. And so, yeah, when you start getting to the orange, the enhanced, moderate risk, and even the high, now you're really starting to talk about the potential for more widespread severe weather. And when you start getting to the enhanced category as well, that's your more, okay, now we're going to start dealing with the potential for a couple of strong tornadoes or two, some long track tornadoes as well.
Yes. So with the enhanced risk being issued, Jackson has put out a 3 out of 5 risk for a good portion of their area for severe storms likely, damaging wind gusts, large hail up to the size of golf balls, and tornadoes are very possible, like you said. Now, of course, this would be from Wednesday morning, the afternoon hours for Mississippi.
Yes. So usually what will happen in this type of setup is you'll start to see the more significant potential for severe weather happen across Mississippi first, and then it will start to move into Alabama. That's usually how it always happens. We'll start to see tornadoes and severe weather over there, and then those storms will start to track in across western Alabama later on in the afternoon and evening. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be storms that develop across Alabama and track across our state as opposed to starting off in Mississippi. That's definitely a possibility as well. But usually in this type of setup, you'll see the majority of the bigger storms start off over there in Mississippi and then track on in, with some storms developing across the western part of the state here in Alabama and track to the north and east as well.
And as you can see right there for West Alabama, you can see basically from Anniston, Gadsden, and Alexander City points off to the woods. Birmingham, Clanton, Montgomery, Tuscaloosa, Demopolis, Selma, you guys are in the enhanced risk for tornadoes, damaging winds upwards to and $half sized hail. So that's pretty important here. If you live in Tuscaloosa or Birmingham or places like that, you guys are definitely in the enhanced for severe storms Wednesday afternoon into the evening hours.
Yeah, and I see a comment over here on the side by Tracy asking, are we looking at potential replay of Tuscaloosa 2011? I mean, you can never say no. I'll go ahead and say that. You can never say no, because everything has a possibility.
Yes.
If you're talking specifically about the overall setup that April 27th had, I would say no, because that had everything that went right for severe weather, and that type of event happened that day. That's very, very rare to get that. Now, does this mean that Tuscaloosa won't see a tornado that comes right through the center of town? We don't know, because the storms hadn't developed yet. But if you're in this type of setup, then I can just go ahead and tell you that you're going to be looking at some stronger potential long track tornadoes with this system. We don't know who it's going to hit yet. We can tell you the zone. That's when we have the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. So it just gives you the overall scope of where the bigger storms are probably going to be. Now we can't really get into, okay, well, specific cities until the storms actually develop. That's what we call nowcasting, when the storms develop and we can actually individually track them and where they're going to go. So yeah, Tuscaloosa, you're in the risk by far. And does that mean that you could see a potentially significant tornado? Yes, it does. Does it mean it's going to happen? No, but you have the potential there.
All right, so let's go on ahead now that we've got that underway, out of the way. Let's go on ahead and show the models and show everybody exactly how it's all going to play out based off of what you've got on your computer.
Yeah, so real quick, we're going to go through the Monday stuff. I'm not going to take a lot of time on this because the bigger issue is going to be on Wednesday. But yeah, if we'll go ahead and bring that up, unless I have to go back and nope, I
Yes,
don't.
we got it.
Okay, so this is what we're watching for Monday, and like I mentioned, I'm just going to quickly run through this. I'll go ahead and say that the greatest potential for seeing a isolated severe storm tomorrow will be from Florence to Huntsville, maybe down to as far south as Birmingham, and then off to the west. So this kind of box, this little zone right in here. So as the storms move in, this is going to be 12Z, so that's 7 a.m. Tomorrow morning. You'll probably start to see storms enter the state probably close to around 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. And they could be a little rough in some places, probably seeing some gusty winds up to about 40 or 50 miles per hour. But once we head, into the afternoon hours, that's when you're going to start to get your greatest instability and kind of wind shear combination. And that's when the storms will probably have to watch to see if they have any damaging wind potential or an isolated tornado as well. We're really not looking at large hail because the bulk of the upper level dynamics are well off to the north and west. That's also contributing to the lower severe weather risk. So as heading to about 5, 6 o'clock, that's when the front will start to kind of stall across the area, and you'll probably start to get more rounds of showers and storms, but they're probably not going to be as potentially strong across the area. Yeah, I heard you go ooh. Yeah, there's
look at that stuff down in South Alabama.
Yeah, but that's so far away from the upper level of support and the dynamics. It's probably not going to be too bad. I guess you can't completely rule out an isolated threat down there across South Alabama, but basically all those storms will be feeding off of is just the richer Gulf of Mexico moisture and stuff. So they'll probably be a little strong, but probably not going to be dealing with a big severe weather risk for that. So that's your Monday. So now let's go ahead and move into Wednesday. I'm going to switch models here. This is going to be the latest. Actually, I got to go back one run. They're doing the current run right now. So there's Monday. Front lays down, probably looking at more scattered showers and maybe some storms on your Tuesday. Nothing severe, more than likely. Wednesday, this is where you will start to feel potential impacts. I can go ahead and tell you that you're more than likely looking at an all-day type of event, meaning that at any point during that day from basically about, I would say, 3 o'clock in the morning to about maybe 3 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, you need to be on guard for some severe weather. We're going to get that front that comes through on Monday, that will stall, and then that will go back to the north as a warm front. So anytime you get warm fronts in this setup, they can really produce some large hail and a lower threat for some damaging winds and maybe an isolated tornado. That just depends on where the storms are. Are they north of the warm front, or are they just south of the warm front? If they're south, they get more rooted to the surface, so you can start dealing with the potential tornado risk with that. So that's something we'll have to watch. But the majority of this is going to be large hail because the convection is going to be elevated. It's not rooted to the surface. The bases are about 2,000 to 3,000 feet above your head. So that just leads to more large hail potential. So that should move through during the morning hours. I can't be really specific, but I can give you a window that it's probably going to be between about 3 a.m. and about 10 a.m. I would think right now, probably within that window. And we can get more specific and kind of close that window closer as we get closer to Wednesday. So that moves through, and the atmosphere gets really, really unstable. And this is where you talk about the fuel. Now, this is where your warm front's going to be. I will go ahead and say this. There could be an interesting setup to where you get what we call a wedge effect on the eastern side of the state. That's where you got cooler and drier air coming down the backside of the Appalachians. Where that sets up could basically make or break your severe weather risk for the eastern parts of the state. Something we'll have to watch for. So if there's some saving grace here for some parts of the area, it could be that wedge bringing in some cooler and drier air on the eastern side. That's why I don't see instability values here across the northwestern part of the state. But as we head later on, notice that starts to creep on in a little bit closer. So during the peak heating of the afternoon, you're probably going to start looking at Cape values close to about 2,000 to 2,500 in some places. Anytime you see the orange and the yellow, that's very, very unstable air, especially for this time of year. So it's very juicy. You're going to feel that mugginess out there for your Wednesday. It's just going to be one of those days where you go outside and just feel like, okay, there's storms coming. It's going to be one of those feelings outside. So in this, what we call the open warm sector, where you see all the instability, and I do think that will probably be just a little bit further to the north here across that northern fringe, but we'll have to wait and see. You start to get the potential for these isolated supercells, the individual storms that start to get going, and that would have your greatest potential for severe weather. Now, you're probably going to look at this and be like, oh, that's just green. There's no red and stuff like that. It's true, but the way that this high resolution NAM model works with the 12 kilometer is anytime you start seeing blotches like this, that's when you start to see that potential for those scattered showers and storms to develop, and you'll start to see that get a little bit more yellows in here. So those are going to be your more potent, potentially high impact storms moving on through. And like I mentioned, it will probably be your typical, they'll develop over Mississippi, maybe some across western Alabama, and they'll start to track to the northeast like they usually do, or usual springtime severe weather setups, and they'll move on through. That realm or the time frame for those will probably be, I would say, somewhere from noon to probably about midnight to maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. That's going to be your time frame for seeing the more hazardous weather, I guess, if you will, the more higher end severe weather threat with the individual supercells moving on in. But once those move out, you'll probably start to see them congeal into a line, maybe a broken line, with the supercells still within that, containing a damaging wind and tornado risk. But once all those storms move out from your area, then you're done with the severe weather risk. And again, that will probably be somewhere late Wednesday night into early Thursday morning as it looks right now. So that's your typical all-day event where you just got to be on guard all day. And if you do that, you'll be just fine. I'll tell you, we'll get through this no matter what happens. We deal with this on a yearly basis, especially during the spring. It's their highest severe weather risk in March and April and even into very early May before it starts to move off to our west into the plains. But it's just one of those you're going to have to watch. It's just your typical severe weather day, could be potentially significant across the area, and just be weather aware. That's the best I can tell you. Some of the comments on the side, I'm seeing Tracy, can you give me a time frame for Birmingham overnight or evening? So if we go by the multiple waves, if you go with wave 1, which would be the warm front, we're probably looking at a time frame somewhere between about 3 a.m. and probably 9 a.m. For the Birmingham area. Again, as we get closer, we get into Monday and Tuesday, then we can really start to kind of shrink that time frame down and get you more specific stuff. For the supercells and the more significant severe weather risk for Birmingham, you're anywhere between about noon and probably midnight, that 12, maybe 13, 14-hour window. And that's just because we'll probably get storms that develop across western Alabama, but you'll probably see storms first develop over Mississippi, and then they'll track on in. So it's just that entire time frame where you could get storms that develop and then move on in, and then you'll probably have more rounds of those storms move in later on in the afternoon, evening. So basically, from noon to about midnight, maybe 2 a.m., that's your time frame for Birmingham, and really for I would say probably the entire state right now is. When you start dealing with the supercells, it's probably going to be from about noon to about midnight or so. But again, as we get closer, get more higher resolution model data in play, then we can kind of narrow down that time frame.
Let me show you this real quick, bud. You there?
Yeah.
Okay, let me show you this. Check out the actual low there, 999. Off of the EMCW.
Yeah, off of the European model.
Yeah,
And yeah,
or
and
yeah,
just where that low is situated is just the prime
yes,
spot. That's why several days ago when it started to trend real in this direction, it caught our eye in the weather community because that's your typical significant severe weather setup. That's
yes.
classic. That's your classic setup that we deal with here in the spring, and that's what we're going to be looking at for Wednesday.
And I mean, that's in a perfect spot just off to the west of St. Louis.
Yeah, anytime you see a low like that, below 1,000 millibars around that Missouri, St. Louis, maybe down to just northwest of Memphis area, that's that prime
Yeah.
spot to get that low pressure system for this type of event. Now, you have to have other things in play, of course, but if you're just going off of looking at that, that's what you would need to see.
So it's definitely going to be a interesting thing to say the least.
Yeah. And Jamie, I see your question over there. Yeah, just go ahead. Just go ahead and send your question out. I keep looking at them. So if you have any questions, just send them our way.
So this is going to be a pretty significant weather threat, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, just like I said, I feel like I keep hitting it on its head, but it's or beating the drum, I should say.
Beating a dead
Yeah,
horse.
being a dead horse. Yeah. But yeah, it's just it's spring in the southeast, and these are the systems that we have to watch for, and they give you more significant severe weather risk for longer track, stronger tornadoes across the area.
So, and I see that the Zero Z is starting to come out right now. And here is something rather interesting. I just saw this, Taylor.
Okay.
I don't know if you have seen this or not, but this is concerning. And I do believe this is for tomorrow.
All right. What you got?
Give me just a second. As you can see here, this is the actual sounding for Tuscaloosa, and look at the hazard type, tornado.
Yeah, the thing though to look at is that sounding does look impressive. I'm not denying that, but
Right.
if you don't have the dynamic support in place that gives the upper level lift, it's one thing to have the low level lift, but if you don't have the upper level lift, that more colder air aloft, then
Yes.
it just kills the severe weather risk. So I mean, yeah, Tuscaloosa, you could see a storm tomorrow. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but
Yes.
it's not good. Tomorrow's, I can almost guarantee it that it's not going to be a huge risk more than likely across the area. But that doesn't mean you don't turn your back on it. It's still a severe weather risk. It's just the lower end of things for your Monday. Our big thing would be coming up on Wednesday.
Correct. Like see right there, the storm right over Tuscaloosa there, and that would be 22Z Monday.
Yeah, so that'd be about 4 o'clock or so on.
So we would definitely have to start watching those.
Yeah.
That would be peak heating.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, any of the storms tomorrow, we're gonna have to watch. There's no doubt about that. I did see a question. I believe it was from Tracy talking about do mountains deter tornadoes? Yeah, it can to some extent. It basically deals with it kind of breaks up the circulation. But if you have a strong enough circulation, it really doesn't affect it that much, to an extent at least. But yeah, they can, because it kind of blocks off some of the lower level circulation. But like I said, if you have a strong enough circulation, once it goes past that area, it will probably, if the tornado had lifted, it would probably come back down again. So yes, that's definitely possible to get that.
So, well, dude, this is going to definitely be something that we need to watch. Now, of course, right now, there's no severe weather tonight. There is a small risk for tomorrow, but the main show comes on the day on Wednesday.
Yeah, and so just the best piece of advice I can give you is just be prepared. That's all. That's all you can do is just be prepared. Have ways to get warnings if they're needed. And Wednesday's just gonna be one of those days where you just kind of periodically check on the weather and see how things are going. And it's probably one of those situations where once the storms start going, it's wall to wall severe weather coverage, meaning that from the beginning of the warnings to whenever the warnings are done, it could be one of those situations where we're on TV for about it could be a complete 12 hours. Who knows? So
Right.
I've done some of these before where I can't remember exactly what year it was. It might have been November 2017, 2016, something like that. It was late November. I remember that. It was just after Thanksgiving. And we literally had tornado warnings back to back to back as many times as I can remember, and doing coverage from about 6 p.m. on whatever day it was to about 9 a.m. the next morning. And that's when the final warnings were clear for the state. So that's a good 15, 13 hours or so, 13, 14 hours of just continuous coverage. So yeah, it's one of those days where if we get the severe weather that we're thinking we're going to get, it's going to be one of those where we're going to be on TV, and just because there's tornado warnings that just continue for the entire afternoon and evening.
Well, and now are you going to try to do more updates on your side, on your site tomorrow?
Yeah, I will. I will definitely do a Facebook Live, a quick version tomorrow night. As we get into Tuesday and even maybe Wednesday morning, depending on how things kind of shape out across this stuff. Tuesday, I'll probably do more of a breakdown and answer your questions if you have any, kind of like what we're doing right here. So Monday, yeah, I'll do a Facebook Live probably somewhere around 8 to 9 p.m. in the evening. But Tuesday, that's going to be one where we'll dive in deeper. I'll dive in deeper and kind of take it step by step and give you the latest information on that. If you have any questions, shoot them my way. I'll try to answer them the best that I can.
And by the way, real quick, we also need to note that, you always need to keep checking back with us, because there is a possibility when you have these severe weather setups that a coastal system, like a complex of storms, may actually form along the coast and rob the area of the energy it needs for severe weather.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, right now it's not showing that, but you may wake up on Wednesday and have that system down there, and then that completely derails any severe weather potential that you may have.
Yeah, and that's definitely a possibility, but I'll go ahead and say that based on how the system and the upper level support and all that stuff moves on in, it really doesn't favor a Gulf Coast MCS, what we call it, that cluster that kind of gets down there from Mobile, Panhandle of Florida and stuff. What that does is it blocks the inflow, the southerly winds that come into it, that bring in the warm, moist air. It'll hit that like a brick wall, and everything that comes in behind it, because the winds are still coming out of the south, is going to be the more rain-cooled air, because it's going into the storms, and then the storms that cool down the atmosphere. Now that wind and temperature-wise are moving more further to the north. So, I mean, it's possible. If there's going to be a saving grace, that would probably be the best saving grace you could have with this situation. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, the way that it moves in, it really doesn't kick off one of those MCSs down there that just completely kills the severe weather risk. It's possible. Right. Keep your fingers crossed that it does, because that would save a lot of headaches for Wednesday. But it's not looking that likely right now.
And one more thing I do need to say, the winds outside of storms tomorrow and on Wednesday, they are going to be screaming out of the south, pushing all of those ingredients from the Gulf up here. Yeah, so you're probably looking at some breezy conditions for your Monday, and then that will kind of lessen for your Tuesday. But when Wednesday's system comes on in, yeah, you're probably going to see some gusty winds outside of any of the storms, about 20, maybe 30 miles per hour or so. I don't think you're looking at like a wind advisory type of criteria where you're dealing with it's harder to drive
out there and stuff like that. But I'll go ahead and say this, though, talking about wind advisories, whenever you have a severe weather risk like this in place and you have wind advisories before the storms even get here, that's a good sign, or not a good sign, but it's a sign that you're probably going to deal with a rough day.
Yes. Well, and real quick, before we let them go, how much rain are we expecting between now and Thursday with both systems?
So I would say probably with this system coming on Monday, if you're a place that gets the showers and storms, you're probably looking at about maybe an inch or so.
Okay.
With the system coming in on Wednesday, you're probably looking at another maybe 2 inches, maybe 2 to 3 inches. Again, it just depends on how the storms will train. It could be that there could be several communities that just see multiple waves of storms, and they end up getting a total of about 3 to 4 inches from Monday to Thursday. But the fact that we've seen a lot of dry weather across the area, there's a little bit of a drought in place as well. That's not going to cause really big flooding issues. You could get some flash flooding, though, and again, that's only if you start getting storms that train over the same area for multiple hours. That would be a flash flood risk right there. But I'll go ahead and say this: the way that the mid-level winds are oriented and how fast they are, the storms that will develop Wednesday will be probably going at about 50 to 60 miles per hour or so. So they're going to be booking it across the area. So the only way that you get a flash flood risk is if you start getting those supercells or those individual storms that just keep going and going and going, and they're kind of more clustered, if you will. So it's possible, but I say that the flash flood and overall flooding potential is definitely on the lower side of things with this, which is good because it's just one less thing we really have to worry about.
Yes. Well, Taylor, that's going to do it for this edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP. Before we sign off, is there anything else you would like to say?
Yeah, just real quick. I see Tracy right there. Storm cell can carry more rain with it. Correct. Yeah, the stronger the storm, the stronger the updraft is, the heavier the rain will be, just because that's the intensity of the storm. So yeah, I mean, if you get these stronger supercell storms that move over your area, you're not only going to have to worry about a tornado risk with that for large hail and damaging winds, but yeah, there's going to be some heavy rain. If you're out, you really don't want to be out in that anyway, but if you are, that's your type of blinding rain and stuff like that. So yeah, a storm cell, just depending on how strong the updraft is, that tells how much heavier rain potential it will have. So the stronger the updraft, the more of, think of like a sponge. You dip sponge in a bucket of water. If you just kind of gently press it, it's only going to give, a certain amount of water that comes out of it. But if you really, really kind of wring it out and stuff, that's like the stronger updraft. You're taking every single possible precipitable water, is what we call the overall moisture content of the atmosphere. You just wringing that out like crazy. That's where you get the stronger the stronger updraft, creating more heavy rainfall. So that's just kind of, thinking away of that.
And right here, there are going to be some storms that develop in Mississippi and move over into Alabama. However, there could be some that develop right here on top of us in Alabama. That's the supercellular nature of these storms that we're going to see on Wednesday.
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is, think of summertime storms. How you get to the peak heating of the day and they just start to bubble up across the area. You don't know where they're going to develop, but they're going to develop over a wider area. That's the kind of situation we deal with this. What you're probably going to look at is, after that warm front moves through, if you're going to start seeing the supercells, they will probably first develop over western Mississippi. But then what happens is, that's where the better ingredients, the overall heating and that front moving on in, that's where you're going to start to get the storms that develop first. Now, that will probably happen within just a very few hour window time frame. But what happens is, as that front continues to move in, then you're probably going to start to see around maybe noon, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you would start to see other storms start to develop. Those would be your more, they're just starting to bubble up and go across the area. And those could be anywhere. They could be anywhere from central or eastern Mississippi or even into western or central Alabama. That's just the nature of it. You just don't know where they're all going to develop. We can give you the zone. That's what I talk about, that Storm Prediction Center outlook. It gives you the zone of where the worst storms are going to be. But until they actually start to develop, we don't really know that, oh, well, then Jasper at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is going to be dealing with a potential supercell moving in, or Birmingham at 5 o'clock is going to start seeing one. We don't know that until they develop and we can track them. But it's just going to bubble up, kind of like your summertime thunderstorms that just develop. You don't know where they're going to develop, but they will. We know that they will. And once they do, then we'll be able to track them as they move on in. So, yeah, you're probably going to get storms that develop first, maybe across Louisiana and western Mississippi in the early afternoon. But then as we progress to like maybe 2 or 3, again, I don't want to get too specific, but that's the type of situation where we're going to look at. We'll probably start to see big storms well west of us. And then when we get in around noon to 2, that's when we start to see storms start to randomly develop in Mississippi and Alabama, and then they'll track off to the northeast.
So once again, there is your risk. Basically, if you are from Gadsden to Anniston to Alexander City, points off to the west. In Alabama, you're under the enhanced risk. Places off to the east are under the slight risk. There for severe storms. And one more time, there is the large scale or enhanced risk now, which ultimately could potentially become a moderate risk by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. I know that we're focusing in on who's in what risk or whatever. That's okay being these several days out, because you start to see maybe where the worst potential would be. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that once we get into Wednesday, regardless of what risk you're in, almost every single county, probably every single county in Alabama is going to be under a severe weather risk from damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. So at that point, whatever risk you're under, it just doesn't matter anymore. You're under a risk. So that's just for now. We can actually start to see where the greatest potential is going to be. But I'll go ahead and tell you that once we get into Wednesday, just forget about what risk you're in. You're under a risk, and you have to watch it.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the forecast with Stingray and TP. We hope that you guys have a great rest of your evening. Now, myself and Taylor Plutt will both be doing updates, periodically on his Facebook and his social media accounts, and then mine as well, to get you guys ready and prepared for this severe weather event. And then during the severe weather event, we will be right here on social media providing severe weather updates, correct?
Yes. And if y'all don't follow me on Facebook or Twitter, just look at my name. I see it's right down. I can point at it right there.
Yes.
Right down the bottom left. Just type my name in, and you'll see my professional page. It'll say Meteorologist Taylor Plutt. So give that a like and a follow for the latest information on that. On Twitter, I need to get back on Twitter more. I feel like I zone in more on Facebook, but it's at tplott. That's TPLOTTWX is my Twitter handle on that.
All right, man. Well, that's going to do it, and we will see you guys later on. We will get through this severe weather. We have it, all the time during the spring and fall, but this is the most significant one that we've had in quite a while, and the first one that we've had this year. So have a great rest of your evening, and as always, from us here at the forecast from Stingray and TP, God bless.